Okay, perfect.
Welcome everyone, and welcome Paula Peralta to this relationship should we talk about it weekly show, and I'm so excited to have you as my guest today, Paula. Miss Paula Peralta, welcome. How you be?
Thank you. I'm great. Just living the dream. How are you doing? Hi, Jason. Hi, everybody. Hi, Leah. Marianne. Thanks for joining us, and everyone that's going to be joining after.
Yeah,
because
we love you.
Ron has created something really magical, so
yeah,
we'd be silly to miss it.
Yeah, and it's fun, and it's all about relationship with myself and others. But like being in New Caledonia, we are confined. Like since last week, we have our kids with us, like in the home, and like it's supposed to be 15 days, but might be 45 days or something like that. And I never had so much fun. I mean, I'm like helping some people getting online on other in Australia or stuff. Like it's just all about creation. And at the same time, I just sometimes close the laptop and every phone and just go read my book and taking my notes. And like, for me, it's like creation as hell. And I would love for people to see all the things you wanted to do for years, but you didn't have time, and blah, 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 justification, just, oh no, you have time. So you have time, and internet is not broken. So what the fuck? Like, go for it.
Yeah, it's so funny because we've also, so I'm in Los Angeles, California, and we've been in quarantine for like almost 2 weeks, I think, but I've never been more busy than I have been in like the past week or two. Like it is meeting after meeting and creation after creation. And yeah, it's like, it's really cool to see the gift that this has been in allowing people to like step up and create, like you said, where before they had the reasons and justifications of like, oh, I don't have time, or I have too many things going on. And I think it's really interesting too, because I was actually looking at the graphic that Leah actually created for this specifically. And the question, I remember kind of like everyone was sending in these amazing quotes for their graphics. And I was like, I don't even know like what I would want my thing to be. So I went back and looked at my graphic today, and it was, what if you never slowed yourself down, turned yourself down, or made yourself smaller for anyone? And when I read that, I totally started cracking up, because it's like, we're talking about relationship, but it's like also like, or what about anything, including the coronavirus? It's like, what like space and ease can you have in situations and times like this, where like the world is in lockdown for all intents and purposes, but it's like, what if you're actually willing to outcreate that and not turn yourself down and not give up and not quit and continue to like be the brilliant big being, hi John, that you be. Like if you didn't ever slow yourself down or turn down or like make yourself small, whether it's in relationship or in any situation, it's like truly what would be possible? Like what can you create when you're willing to outcreate everyone and everything? So
and I love that because by doing that, as you just like beautifully said, it's like you will become the leader of your life. And by doing that and choosing for you, not against others, you will be the invitation for people around you to not following you, but to choose for themselves. And like, what an amazing gift. By choosing for you, what an amazing gift you will give to the world. That's awesome.
Yeah. Totally. And like, so I just, Simone Milosis and Brendan Waugh are doing a program. It's like a 6-month program called Relationship Ins and Outs. And they just had their second call yesterday. And one of the things that they talked a lot about was separation, and how, like, one, a lot of times we create separation, like, how a lot of times we create separation, and if we're willing to actually acknowledge how connected that we all truly be, that is what allows the brilliance of each of us to show up. So it's like, yes, be willing to outcreate the trauma, the drama, but also be willing to outcreate the brilliance and be willing to like look around and see where people are creating amazing things. And instead of looking at it, which in this reality, it's like, oh, well, that market's already been covered or that niche has already been filled. Like there's no space for me. It's like, what if you could actually be willing to outcreate even the brilliance and be willing to show up and like create your brand of magic and create the things that you as you can create that no one else can create because they're not you. And it's like just looking at those questions of like truly what else is possible that you haven't even considered. And it's like so often when we're looking at, I think we go into relationships and we look at, you know, relationship we know is the distance between 2 points. So automatically that creates separation. If I'm in relationship with you, whereas like if I'm willing to be in communion and include everything that you're creating in the future of my creations and in the generation of my creations as well, it's like that has such a like expansive, amazing generative energy to it. That is like such a different way of creating your life. And it's like, that is the space where all of the possibilities like truly exist, is in that space of communion.
Yeah, I love that. Let's do creationship instead of relationship.
Yes, 100% creationship. And that is, go ahead.
Go for it.
No, I just think that's like one of the things that I've always looked at, and I've been looking at this more and more because I've had relationships, you know, like traditional relationships with partners. And one of the things I've been looking at more and more lately is like that idea of creationship. And it's like, if you're not creating way more with someone than when you're alone, then it's like you really need to look at whether it is a relationship, like whether there is that separation, whether there is that distance, or whether it's something that actually allows you to consistently and constantly be out creating each other and inspiring and empowering each other to create more together than you would be able to take, you know. And that to me is creationship, like is always being able to create more, and the other person creating space for you to be able to create what you know is possible.
I love this space because often when people listen to create more together, they think that suppose you must do everything together. That's not at all. Like being the allowance of yourself and being the allowance of the other one and the space, you're just like that word, like boom. What if like what we are talking about is like creationship is like the generative relationship we have with the other one, just by let him or her be the contribution in your life, like just by being there, even if it's not in the same room, even if it's not in the same place at the same, just their contribution to you just by being there.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's when as I've been looking at this, it's like that when you talk about like creationship with someone else, like for me, it really, like I'm not currently in a relationship. Like I don't, so what I've been looking at more and more is like creating that intimacy with myself, like having that, like honoring that allowance, that like kindness and caring and the nurturing with me, and what that actually creates, not just if I were to choose to do relationship with a man or a woman or what, like whoever, it's like really looking at when I'm actually willing to have that vulnerability with myself, and when I'm actually willing to lower my walls and barriers, that actually allows me to be in creationship with everyone and everything. So it doesn't matter like who it is, what it is, like I can allow everything to contribute to me when I'm willing to be vulnerable. But if I'm not willing to have that vulnerability with me, I cannot have it with anyone else. Yeah. And so it's like, when you look at allowing everything in the world to contribute to you energetically, it's like, what is not possible? You know what I mean? It's like literally everything's possible. And that is the gift of creationship.
Yeah. And I would love for people listening to that now or later, like I'm looking at you in the eyes right now, like if you have only one commitment in your life, it's commitment to engage to yourself, like choosing for you on a daily basis, choosing for you, again, not against other, again, like not against her, just choosing for you what's true for you on a daily basis. Like it will give so much space and lightness to every relationship around you. At the same time, being in the allowance and let others be a contribution to you. I'm not telling you like you only need yourself. No, it's not about that. Yeah, you have to choose on a daily basis to be happy. You have to experiment stuff to know what's bring you joy, because joy will be followed by everything in life, and relationship and partners and money and everything. At the same time, by being vulnerable and like pushing down your barrier on a daily basis, like destroy and create all the relationships you've got with yourself and others on a daily basis, like a muscle you train, you will let others be a contribution to you. Even a stranger in a supermarket or whatever, like be vulnerable. For me, being vulnerable, it's like one of my superpowers. I really just enjoy so much pushing down my barriers and create a space of intimacy with people I don't even know. And it's always create way much more for me and for them. Like,
yeah, it's so interesting, like what you're talking about with receiving and that vulnerability is like, it is such a choice. And I think so often, like this is, I was recently reading Shannon Douglas, Shannon O'Hara, just released a book called Beings of Light. And she actually talks about this specific thing, like gifting and receiving, which is actually contribution. And that's like when both beings or people or whatever, like are willing to lower their walls and barriers. But it's like so often, and trust me when I tell you that like it took me 2 years to like get this. But like so often when we talk about lowering our walls and barriers and choosing vulnerability, like it comes still from a space of contraction and a space of fight. Like I remember specifically getting facilitation once from Dane around like him asking me to lower my walls and barriers. And I said to him, like, every time you ask me to lower my walls and barriers, I choose it, and I can perceive my barriers lowering. And also it's almost as like, as that barrier lowers, I can see an infinite number of barriers right behind it that are like, that it's a fight for me. Like I feel this like frustration coming up of like, I can never get to this space of receiving because I can never actually lower my walls and barriers enough to receive everything that's possible. And one of the things that he said to me is like, what if you gave up the fight? Like, what if you didn't have to push them down? Like, what if you could actually relax into lowering your walls and barriers? And in that space of relaxation, that's what exponentializes your receiving. And for me, like, that's where, when I've started to really look at that, and I will tell you, like, one of my best friends, she was like such a space of vulnerability with me always, like as I was going through this process of learning to like be vulnerable and learning to like actually not just be vulnerable, but to choose vulnerability in every situation and to choose receiving. And I look back at that so often with so much gratitude, because it's like, we're in this reality, we're so often not taught, either we're not taught how to be vulnerable and receive, or we are like invalidated out of vulnerability and receiving. And it's like, so often we go into like, we can't have communion. I'm like totally getting goosebumps right now, but it's like, we can't have communion because we don't learn how to receive. And part of communion are the two components, gifting and receiving. So it's like, you can give to people, but if you can't actually receive their receiving in that gifting process, then you can't have communion. And so it's like, instead of going back to the like walls and barriers things, it's like, if you actually are willing to get to a space where you're actually just relaxing into lowering your walls and barriers and just almost like gently asking them to lower or to dissipate completely, it gives such a like, it has a way more, and this might just be true for me, and if it's not true for you, that's totally fine, but it has like a way more expansive energy to like relax into lowering your walls and barriers than to like trying to like knock them down with a sledgehammer or like push them down with all of your might or whatever it looks like. It's like, what if it is that easy? Like, what if choosing vulnerability is as easy as simply relaxing into especially vulnerability?
If you don't make that significant, like just I choose to lower my barriers. And never make yourself wrong if you have like you said, like, oh, I see a many love barrier. Yeah, that's cool. How does it get any better than this? How did I get so lucky to have so many barriers I can train to push them down on a daily basis?
Yeah,
and like,
totally.
yeah,
And, yeah, I love that. Sorry, did you have more?
No, go.
Yeah, it's interesting too, is that one of the other things that I think the other thing with like walls and barriers, it's so funny to me that we're like talking about this. I've never actually like had this long of a conversation about this and vulnerability, but it's like one of the things that is so interesting, and actually this is one of the things Dane said when he was facilitating me, is, and he didn't say it to me directly, he was like facilitating the class as well, but it really stuck with me because he said, the thing about barriers and walls is that they're there because at some point in our life we decided, or we were taught that that was valuable, like that we needed protection, or we needed safety, you know, which is protection, or we needed whatever that is, like we needed to have those barriers in place in order to survive whatever invalidation or whatever experience, you know. But now it's like, even the value of the people that are here willing to have this conversation, now it's like, is now the time for you to get to this space where you recognize that with your walls and barriers, it's like, yes, you're pushing out the bad, but you're also pushing out the good as well. And you're also like, you're cutting yourself off from the world, but you're cutting you off from you as well. So it's like, anytime we're choosing separation because we've decided we're not choosing vulnerability, like that's where we start to lose us. And that's where we turn ourselves down and cut ourselves off and are not actually able to receive all of like what's truly possible in the world. So
yeah, and please, all of us, like, this is for those who are not watching us live, but will watch the replay maybe in 1 month, one hour, or 10 years. We are talking about vulnerability in one of the most pandemic crises the world knows, like coronavirus. If you look at this like in 20 years, just Google that. And where everyone said, please stay away from each other, please don't touch each other, please don't hug each other, please, like, but so many walls and barriers. Like, that's what we have been asking, like everyone asking us to do that. And
well, not just asking, they're mandating. Like,
yeah, demanding, like it's almost laws. Like, we are at the moment, I'm confined at home, like with my kids and wife, we cannot go out. We need to print an attestation, like a document we sign to say, hey, I'm going to do my groceries because I have no choice. And I can get a fine for being out there, like in the fucking movies. But at the same time, yeah, please don't look at the Wikipedia vulnerability definition. Sorry about that, but fuck the Wikipedia vulnerability definition. It's way more than that. Like, the gifting and receiving that the vulnerability will allow you, and it's fun. It's crazy. Yeah. Yesterday evening, like, do you know Yasodara? She asked, it's a Belgian French chef, like, and she was like, oh, can you jump on? We will talk. What is your subject? And I told her a week ago, like, oh, I would love to speaking about pushing down your barriers and vulnerability. And so we did yesterday for 20 minutes. And she just called me back at night and said, would you want to do like a 30-day challenge about pushing down your barriers and stuff? And I was, yeah. And because a lot of people don't use that tool. Some don't know and some don't use it. And for me, it's like a muscle you train. I remember the first time I used those, I was literally every morning waking up and closing my eyes and like imagine the barriers and push them down until to the ground. And now I push down my barriers just by thinking of it, like on a daily basis. And like, it's an amazing tool for you to have. And yeah, as you said, being vulnerable will allow so much gifting and receiving into your world, even if it's distantly. And guess what? The best thing about vulnerability, the best thing about having all walls and barriers down is that there is less and less and less resistance. So when you don't resist and react to something, something's really much more smooth, and people doesn't want to hurt you. You know what I mean? Like, if there is no resistance, people will not pick you or whatever. It's not fun for them. So what if vulnerability was your most powerful potency, especially right now, but for any time?
Yeah, for sure. And you know, it's interesting too, like even going back to the conversation about kind of, we started off talking about like how connected we are truly. And it's like, even as we're, you know, in the midst of a global pandemic right now, and as we're looking at that, it's like, if you actually can acknowledge how truly connected we all are. And one of the things that Leah put in the chat is that, like, the question of would an infinite being truly choose this? It's like, well, would an infinite being truly choose walls and barriers? Like, or would they choose to expand and be the space of like gifting and receiving that they truly be? And so often, like, one of my favorite tools with this conversation around vulnerability is like, if our natural state is joy, then it's like, okay, cool. If I'm feeling contracted, or if am I like feeling contraction, or am I actually perceiving contraction? Because when you look at like the infinite being conversation, it's like the lower harmonics is like thinking, feeling, whereas like knowing, being, perceiving, receiving are actually the like that is the natural state of an infinite being, where it's like you're choosing joy and you're choosing vulnerability. So it's like one of the questions, especially now, and I do this in like my relationships a lot lately especially, is like, okay, who does this belong to? Because so often, like, we are all so connected, and if there is no separation in us, how often is it that we are so aware of all of the things that other people are struggling with, or the things that they're choosing that we wouldn't necessarily choose, but because we're connected to them, we can perceive it. We often buy it as ours and think that we're the ones that are crunchy. We're the ones that are experiencing the anxiety or the depression or the fear or the guilt or the blame, or like all of those distractor implants, where if you're actually going back to one, like, would an infinite being truly choose this? And two, who does this belong to? And it's like, you don't actually have to know who it belongs to, but just know that that's not actually yours. And so with that, like, you can actually return to center with consciousness attached. And that, I think, is true, like, not only if we're talking about on a global level or universal level, but it's also true in your relationships. Because so often, like, our partners, like, we work in such close proximity with them that it's like often we go into their world. And so we perceive what they're feeling and we think it's ours. But it's like, actually, if you're asking that question, like, who does it belong to? And yeah, Leah popped up and said, is this mine? Like, that's, for me, who does it belong to is the tool, but is this mine is actually the question that I ask. Because if I wake up in the morning and I'm crunchy, like, my first question is like, okay, is this mine? And it's like a yes, no. Like, what's true for you will always make you feel lighter. If you're feeling crunchy, that means you're heavy, which means that there's a lie present. So it's like that question of like, is this mine? And again, you don't have to know who it is, but it's like, okay, I'm going to return to center with consciousness attached and flow energy to, you know, expand out, like doing all of those exercises that allow you to get to the space of you, because the space of you is actually total vulnerability, it's total gifting, and it's total receiving, which is what allows communion. And you be an invitation, like, even in that conversation around gifting. This was something I just read Shannon O'Hara's book, Beings of Light, and she, like, that book has taught me more I read it in like 12 hours. Like, I read it so fast, but like, that book taught me so much more about my willingness, like giving up control and being willing to be vulnerable and receiving. And she talks a lot about gifting and receiving. One of the examples that she gives is she talks about, so just like how we talk about thinking and feeling is the lower harmonic of being and like knowing, being, perceiving, and like the receiving. So in this reality, we talk a lot about give and take. And that is the lower harmonic of gifting and receiving. And so if ever like you're having a hard time looking at, or like you can't necessarily get the energy of like, well, what is gifting and receiving actually look like? You go to the earth, like, and go and look at how, you know, like the sun shines on the earth every single day, right? But like the sun doesn't send the earth an invoice for the warmth that it's given it every single, right? Like every single day. Like, it's not like, all right, time to pay up, earth. Like, I shine on you for 24 hours. it's like, that is, the sun is willing to simultaneously gift, the earth receives it, and then all of nature and the universe simultaneously in that gifting gifts back to the sun. And then there's like creation, there's growth, there's prosperity, like there's changes to the earth that happen that then go, you know, and listen, I'm not a scientist, but it's like, we know that a lot of things that happen on earth also directly affect other things that happen in the solar system or in the universe. So it's like this constant energy of gifting and receiving. Or like, even when you go out and you walk in the, you know, you walk in the earth and you see a tree, it's like, if you truly stop and look at that tree, like that tree's not like expecting you to, what, I don't know, give it a kiss or a hug or whatever. Like you can, and it like often will enjoy that, but it's still going to be a tree that's like got its beautiful leaves and providing shade, even if you aren't willing to receive it, right? It's still there willing to gift. And I think like for me, that's been one of the biggest gifts in learning how to be with people, is that like, if I can be like, let's be like trees, but it's like, if I can be like that tree where I can still be me, and like, I happen to have like a sassy, strong personality, as you know, Roman, but it's like, I can still be me and also be gifting constantly and consistently to someone, and not have it, and still be true to like my personality and true to, you know, like my you know, sense of humor or whatever that is. Like, it's in that willingness to lower my walls and barriers and be gifting and not have any expectations of what someone will or will not receive, because their willingness to receive is never about me. It's always about them.
So you are basically saying, don't make yourself smaller for anyone.
Basically.
I've placed it.
Yeah. Yep.
It was beautiful.
I think, thank you. Sorry, I could talk about, you know, this, I could talk forever, but do you have something? Does anyone else have anything? Leah's like, she's going crazy in the chat. I love it. Let's see what she said.
Like,
yeah.
Leah is coming. Are you coming? Do you have a question?
I love it.
No, I mean, it was.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's me, Leah.
Hi, Leah.
Hey, can you hear me okay? Is it choppy? Is it okay?
No, it's great.
Oh, great. Cool. I didn't know this was what would be coming up, but I'm just realizing as you're chatting through this how much the distractor implant like stops communion, stops gifting and receiving in totality. And my distractor implant of choice is blame, shame, regret, and guilt. Like, it's my favorite. I love to live there. For some reason, I'm figuring that out. It's got some value for me, especially like regret and guilt, blaming myself, shaming myself. And I'm just so curious, like, if you have any perspective on that. Like, if I think about gifting and receiving, and I am strengthening those muscles in myself, and it's brilliant, and I'm so proud of myself, and I just am in awe of all the things that, like earlier in the conversation, you were talking about putting things in place because we needed to be protected maybe as little ones to survive this reality with no cognitive manual of how to do it. And we brilliantly embodied these things. And now it's like, okay, yeah, that's like the distractor implant that I get stuck in. And so I'm just curious if you have anything to say about that.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. So there's like a lot there. And I would say for me, one of the things that, there's like a couple things there. So one is for me, like, so distractor implants, for those of you that maybe aren't aware, like distractor implants are, like you said, things like anger, rage, fury, blame, shame, regret, guilt, like, you know, there's a lot. There's actually a book called Living Beyond Distraction that I just reread that like always rocks my world. But the thing about distractor implants is they're just that, they distract from what's actually true. So just like you're talking about this, you know, like the reason and justification that we put up our walls and barriers, it's like, it ultimately all comes down to, it's just a choice. So the choice to be vulnerable, the choice to gift, the choice to receive, and that is always the choice to be greater. So, and in that greatness, that's where you can actually surpass limitations. You surpass the reason and justifications because they're not even real. And so often when we create those, like, I'm sorry, should I apologize?
Yeah, you need to apologize to me now. Yeah.
For giving you a whole new reality.
Yeah. Well, and it's like, I get that I get it intuitively, and it's just like, okay, Leah, just choose it. But I get too in this conversation that it's like, am I really willing to get that vulnerable with myself, or is there something that I'm running from and hiding from because I don't think that like all of me could be, you know what I'm saying? Like there's something that I'm not getting, I'm aware that I'm getting vulnerable with myself about, because if I was willing to get vulnerable with myself about who I am, then nobody else could point a finger at me and shape me to anything. And I think it's from the outside coming in, but it's really from me. Yeah. And so it's really interesting.
Well, and like
I'm like really interested in this conversation. Oh yeah, I was just gonna say one more thing here is like really interested in the conversation of creationship as myself. Like what you were referring to at the beginning, like you don't have to see yourself, you can't have it with anybody. So I'm really with it as me so that I can go and have a different reality.
Well, so what's interesting is, there is that one is relationship actually is a distractor implant. So like when you look at that, it's like how many of us are creating relationships so that we can maintain the distance from us? And how many of us are creating no relationship so we can maintain the distance from us? So it's like, and I've been on both sides of that, where it's like, if I start to get to a level of vulnerability and intimacy with myself, I often will like make really interesting choices in relationship. Like, because I'll like choose men that, like the relationship is just physical, or I'll choose it where like I'm going to say broken, right? Like they're making interesting choices in their lives. And so that's something for me to focus on so that I don't actually have to look at what's actually true for me. And then the other side of that is like going into resistance and reaction of relationship. And it's not just like men that I would choose as lovers. Like it happens with men, it happens as women. Yeah, the conversation around entertainment as well is, it's like how much of like entertainment is just one big fat distractor implant. So it's like you start to get so close to that level of vulnerability. And that's the thing about like resistance is, I always think about it if like, so if you have the two magnets and you flip one side to the positive side and one side to the negative, like if you try to push them together, like the two similar sides, they'll push against each other, right? So there's always going to be a comfortable distance. And that is what all of this boils down to, is creating distance. And that's why we don't want to actually do relationship. We want to do creationship. But when we go to the distractor implants, that's the reasons and justifications for not choosing the vulnerability that will allow the creationship to show up. Like that is what creates the distance, and that distance actually prevents us from having communion.
Yeah,
drop mic.
Totally. Boom.
Boom.
Yeah. So I think like, and honestly, I like, we're talking about all of these like ideas and stuff. And for me, like, I really like to get down to kind of the pragmatics of, like so like, what do you do? Well, like one, and that's where we started to go with like, who does it belong to? Like, is this mine? Is like, okay, well, how much are you just aware of everyone else's points of view about relationship, the ways that everyone else does relationship, the like reasons, justifications, the projections, the expectations, the separations, the judgments, the rejections that people have around relationship. It's like, what if that's actually not true for you? But you've bought it as true somewhere along the line, because that's what allows you to keep your walls and barriers in place. Do you park and pot on this, Romain?
We can like go for it, and I will do the disclaimer.
Yeah, so I mean, so it's just like everywhere that you're creating relationship or doing relationship, or all the distractors and implants that are allowing you to maintain the distance between you and you, So everything's allowing your comfortable distance to stay in place. We're just trying to create that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right and wrong, good and bad, POC and POD, all nine shorts, boys and beyonds. So the other thing too is like when you look at, okay, so and I'm gonna only bring this up because you put it in the chat, but it's like, okay, so truth, are you an infinite being?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's like, are you in this reality, or is this reality in you? I think I lost.
Yeah, the microphone like just.
Did we lose her?
This reality is in me. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Okay, there we go. That's way better. So yeah, so it's like, okay. Yeah, that's good. So like, it's like, okay, cool. So if this reality is in you, like, are you greater than this reality, or is this reality greater than you?
Right. Totally. I'm greater than this reality.
Yeah, totally. And you're giggling a little, so that means it's true for you. So like, that's the thing, is it's like, so can you see where we start to get caught up in like the reasons, justifications, the distractor implants? Like, that's this reality, but we're actually greater than this reality. So it's like, what beyond this reality is actually possible if you were truly to acknowledge like the greatness of you.
So much ease.
And space, right? You wouldn't want that. You better put all those walls and barriers back in place.
I should just get off this call now.
It's true. Just hang up. It's fine.
Okay, bye.
Right? But it's like, and the thing is, like, that is choice. Like that right there, Leah, just to like talk about how you're like I know it's choice. And I'm like, because I used to do the same thing. Like I remember sitting across the table once, I don't even know what class I was at, but I was at lunch and I was sitting with Dane and I had asked him a question, and I looked at him and I was like, if you say choice, like I swear to God, I will get up and walk away from this table. Like, don't just tell me it's choice, but it's like, what if it is just choice? Yeah. And that's what choice looks like. Like, that's how easy choice is. Like the same way that you're just like, oh yeah, like, yeah, I'm bigger than this reality, and like I choose space and ease. That's the choice. And then you just continue to do the things and choose the things and be the things that keep exponentializing that space. And that's the same thing, going back to the conversation about vulnerability. Like that's the same thing that I had the awareness of that actually got me to start choosing a level of vulnerability, is that I was like, oh, it's literally just like, it's just a choice. Like I can choose to be, there's a conversation right now up with Access around reaction versus action. And we just had our certified facilitator training, and one of the things that we were talking about was like, so basically like a distractor implant, or like basically anytime you are in reaction to something, you are giving up your ability to choose. And like the irony there is that, spoiler alert, like we're actually choosing reaction, but it's like like the action is asking questions. The action is choosing. Like the action is always like, what can I be or do to get around this? Like acknowledgement of like, okay, this distractor implant, again, and we already cleared this, so it's probably a non-issue for you now, but it's like this distractor implant is coming up. Like I can either react to it, or I can take action and choose to ask a question, because a question is always an action. So like, what is this? What can I do with it? Can I change it? How can I change it?
Boom.
Yeah. And those questions will always get you to the space of you.
Yeah. And guys, for everyone online watching at that replay, like, if you don't have a clue about what Paula is talking about, like we are using tools of access consciousness. You can go on www.accessconsciousness.com or www.theclearingstatement.com and have a look. Let's have so much fun. Maybe just get
There's also something, I did a podcast with Megan Hill that actually, it's on my website. If you go to paulaperalta.com, the podcast was called The Gift of Ease. And it was similar to this conversation where it was like me actually having to acknowledge where like I was choosing ease without realizing that I was choosing ease. Because it's like, really, when you look at this, it's like, what future do you want to be in, live in, and create? And it's like, what future do you actually want to be that we can create now together? You know? And the thing about action and reaction, so like if it's one of the things that Gary Douglas, the founder of Access Consciousness, said is that like question always leads to action. If it's generally coming from a space of wonderment, like it's always going to lead to action. But the thing is, action doesn't necessarily mean doing. Like asking is now the time and you get no, waiting in that case is actually an action. Like that's a choice to wait until the time is there. So, and also like when it's funny because this goes back to vulnerability, but it's like when you talk about distractor implants, it's like when you feel that come up, trying not to react is a reaction. So it's like in that space, you have to, that thing has like, we're going to say what this reality set calls triggered you and is like bringing something up for you. So in that space, you are like, okay, cool. If I were truly being me here, what would I choose? And because I've made the choice to not turn myself down or turn myself off or not lose my joy for anybody or anything, I can choose joy in this moment. So what's required? Okay, cool. I'm going to lower my walls and barriers. I'm going to ask what's actually true for me here. And then in that action, I get more awareness. Like in that choice to ask a question, I'm able to shift the energy. And so that's where like you start to look at the future that you know is possible. And it's like, it happens one choice at a time from that space of vulnerability.
Love it. That's so cool. Oh. Question. Open up all the possibilities and action and lead to action. I love it.
Yeah. So the other thing too, I have like one more thing and then I'm sure we're probably up on our time, but it's like the other thing too, and this was another thing that popped, Leah, with your question is like, when you were talking about the distractor implants and like, oh, like this comes up, you know, the guilt and things like that. And it's like, you also want to look at, so basically like where can you have gratitude for whatever that experience is in that moment. So in that vulnerability, you're allowed to have a space of gratitude, or it can create a space of gratitude, because the thing about distractor implants, or the thing about really judgment, is that judgment is a lie. Okay. So, and in the space of gratitude, judgment cannot exist.
Yeah.
So like when you're looking at that, it's like, okay, cool, this judgment's coming up. Like, who does it belong to? One, because it's like, are you truly actually being you there? Or is there somewhere that like your mom judged the thing that's triggering you, or, you know, some lady on the street saw something and was judging you, and you could perceive the judgment and then you bought it as yours. And then it sends you down this spiral. But it's like, if you actually look at like, okay, who does this belong to? Is it mine? No, it's not mine. Okay, cool. I can perceive the judgment, return to sender. Where can I have gratitude for this experience, this conversation, whatever it is that gets brought up for you? Because like for me, that's something I always go back to. Judgment's a lie. And in the space of gratitude, judgment cannot exist.
That's amazing. And something that just like flashed into my mind is when you were talking, I couldn't tell whether you were talking about having gratitude for the quote unquote experience that you were judging, or if you're having gratitude for the distractor implant. And I was like, oh, at first I was like, having gratitude for the distractor implant, that's actually really light. Of like, I wonder where I can be grateful that it protected me in some way, or like, you know, whatever it did, or whatever it served me, whatever value that it is. And yeah, that's just not what I was expecting to get from that, because I didn't know what you were talking about right there. And I get you talking about experience, but like also having like the space to even allow the distractor implant to exist and then not choose it, like to out choose it.
Yeah, well, and it's interesting, yes, for sure. And it's like also, it's just like, what about like gratitude for you in that experience, like above all? And it's funny, I was just talking to I was like in an interview or something, and people one of the questions was like, what was something that you've always been judged for that actually like has turned out to be like one of your greatest strengths? And I think I was like writing an article or something. I can't remember why it came up, but basically what my response was is that as a child, my report cards, like I was a smart kid, but my report cards would always come back saying like, Paula is so bright, she's so intelligent, and she talks too much. And like, it's funny because now I like travel all over the world with like multiple businesses literally getting paid to talk. Like the thing that I was made so wrong for most of my life is like the thing that actually allows me to like outcreate any of those judgments. So it's like when you actually look at that space of like judgment or distractor implant, it's like, okay, well, like what if every wrongness of you is actually a strongness of you?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Another drop mic.
And it's like, what if, I mean, truly, like, what if you were willing to like never give in, never give up, and never quit, no matter what, and always ask for gratitude? Like the earth has gratitude for us. So it's like, what if you could go out into, you know, the earth, or like look at a tree, or I have plants all over in my apartment. Like, I mean, you can see like, so, you know, it's like they're everywhere in my space, because if ever I get to a space where I'm like, where am I? Like I can go and just like pet the leaves of my plant and talk to them and like get to a space of me, because there is no judgment there. There's only gratitude. So it's like, and what if like even in the face of judgment, you were willing to turn it up, whether it's your self-judgment, whether it's like any other,
person.
I mean, really anything, any judgment. It's funny, I am about to pull like the biggest like egomaniac thing ever, but I just had somebody, I did a call a little while ago, and let me see if I can find it. And someone like sent me back the quote from the call, and I was like, dang, like I'm smart. But one of the, so the quote, what I said in the call was that we're too powerful, we're too potent, we're too magical, and there's too much joy to embody to waste time with self-judgment.
Boom.
And it's like, truly, like we started from the very beginning, it's like, what if you never slowed yourself down, turned yourself down, or made yourself smaller for anyone or anything? Like truly, what would be possible? So whatever you do, don't choose you. in or out of relationship.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Boom. And I'm happy because I got you for so many more times. That she was like, you know, I have another call, I'm a host, I need to be gone, and you're still there, and I still have so much gratitude for you. I'm grateful for you. And thank you.
I have so much gratitude for you. Thank you. And thank you guys so much. Thanks everybody. If you ever have any questions, you can reach me Instagram, Facebook. My website is paulaperalta.com, so you're welcome to always, you can send me a message through there. But I adore you. Romain, thank you so much for creating this. You're brilliant.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye, everyone. See you next week.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.